right, the board has returned back to open session. At this time, are there any public comments? All right, if not, are there any changes or additions to the agenda? All right, then we will continue on with the superintendent report.
Wonderful. Thanks, Dan. So tonight I have Christy Mullen and Angela Dozel here who are going to present our first trimester Student Achievement Awards. And I think when we've done this in the past, we have all gotten up out of our seats and been available to shake hands with some of our students.
So I'm going to read all of the names of all of the certificates we have, and we're going to save our best for last, the people who are able to make it tonight. So some of our first students that we have for the ILMEA District 1 Choir Festival is Emily Bartman, Catherine Hallowell, Bennett Janunis, and Caroline Struby. Then for the ILMEA District 1 Jazz Festival, we have Marcus Kuban and Max Schunerman. For our Students of the Month, we have Jaden Barrett, 6th grade for September, Stephen Brown, Encore for September, Chrysler Jimenez, 8th grade Student of the Month for October, and Gabriella Nolan, 7th grade Student of the Month for September. And now, here's our drum roll. All right, would our students that are here come on up that know they're getting an award? Come on up, come on up. So, we have, come on up, right here. Yep. So, we have Desiree LaRock for our 8th grade Student of the Month for September. Congratulations. And then go right ahead and you can shake all the board members' hands. There you go. Liam Cohane, 7th grade Student of the Month for October. You're welcome. And Luke Perry, we're hoping gets to make it, maybe running a few minutes late, but they were planning on coming as well. So thank you very much. We're very proud of our students. As you know, we celebrate so many things that they do here. Student of the Month is extra exciting for us because each of the teams at Hauser recommend nominate one student per month per team, including the Encore team. So that's a pretty big compliment to each of these students for the work that they do and the way that they demonstrate the Hauser way. So congratulations and thanks, guys.
While you're still in this configuration. Sure. So tonight is also board member appreciation. So you'll note behind you that our students really from all of our schools have created different signs and tokens of appreciation for all of you. So also want to just acknowledge the incredibly hard work and dedication that this group brings to our school district all of the time. So thank you from me and thank you from our entire district and community. And then, actually, if you want to have a seat, I do have one other, while I'm standing, I'll take care of this also. We had one other award that I wanted to, Ms. Mullen and I, Christy Mullen and I are going to share this one. So we were, the District 96 new chapter at Hauser School was selected as the best new chapter of Best Buddies in the state of Illinois. So we have Caitlin Stabe, Morella Harrington, and Rob Brown here to accept certificates from all of us. So, oh, Christy, if you want to say a few words, or Christy, you know how this group has.
Yeah. Thank you. Like this group is amazing. If you're not aware of what they do, they bring together students with special needs and our general ed students and have them work together on different projects. All kinds of things, and every month that they work together, they do some great activities. So it's such a wonderful opportunity for all of our students to work together, and we're really pleased with all of the work that they've done. They've made huge strides to be the state of Illinois middle school chapter it's a pretty big deal. So thanks, you guys.
I just want to say one thing if I could. We really couldn't be as successful as we were without the support that we have from Hauser, the students here and their families as well. They really do get behind us and everything we want to do. So just a big thank you to you guys too, because we wouldn't be able to do it without them. Thank you.
So I had one other item also for the superintendent's report, and that is related to the follow-up from the community forum we had about on October 30th about Hollywood School. So we invited the community in to hear more from them in regard to our goals around separating play and parking in particular, and being able to build an addition on Hollywood School. So really want to thank that we had about 50 community members that joined all of us for some really great discussion and lots of ideas. And I do want to share that this is new information, but just tonight in our closed session, the Board of Education agreed to a proposed lease arrangement with the Hollywood Citizens Association. So my goal will be to present that just recently finalized lease to all of them, present it as soon as possible. I know with the holidays coming up, et cetera, there may be some question about particular days, but I will probably reach out to them by way of email tomorrow or Friday, and would hope to hear from them soon in regard to the lease proposal. And then the other thing is we are continuing to work with the Village of Brookfield in understanding what our range of possibilities might be in regard to street parking. So that was another idea that had come up even prior to the community forum, but certainly throughout the community forum, is just considerations around how do we minimize the number of cars in our space so that we can really maximize the play spaces for our students. So with that, that's the conclusion of the superintendent's report.
Okay. Thank you, Martha. Okay, next up is the consent agenda. Would the board secretary like to read the consent agenda?
Tonight's consent agenda includes the meeting minutes of the first closed session dated October 16th, 2019, meeting minutes of the regular meeting, same date, October 16, 2019, minutes of the second closed session, October 16, 2019, minutes of the special meeting held October 30th, 2019, meetings of the first closed section, minutes of the first closed session, November 6th, 2019, meeting minutes of the special meeting and committee of the whole meeting, November 6th, 2019, and minutes of the second closed session, November 6th, 2019. As well as the personnel report as presented, payables pre-list as of October 31st, 2019, and payables pre-list as of November 20th, 2019.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Margie, can you call the roll?
Mr. Barsotti?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Kleiber?
Aye.
Ms. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Muirhead?
Aye.
Mr. Marhold?
Aye.
Mr. Hunt?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay, next on the agenda is the Riverside Education Council. Nothing tonight? No? Okay. Then next up are board member comments.
I'd like to say that I know Hauser this past couple of days put on Baskerville, and that was actually, I was involved in the initial stage setup, and it was really nice sort of seeing how what really looked like nothing in the very beginning has like materialized, and the kids did a great job in the performance, everything from the stage crew, lighting, actors, they're all really good. And so my hat's off to them.
I went to the Veterans Day program at Central. My daughter's there, and Mr. House always does a tremendous job. And I love the way we get to hear from the families. I think that's a special day. And then I went to the science fair. This is our, every other year we do a science fair, and it was a great turnout. It's really nice to see them asking questions and just learning the process, and it seems like they had a good time. So thanks to all the volunteers. It's not an easy task. So I'm glad we do that, and then thank you for the sponsors too. A lot of people donated to help. So.
I'll do that for Ames as well. I wasn't able to attend last year, but I know that's always hugely attended, and it was a packed house again this year.
Yeah.
It's great to see how many veterans actually come out. I didn't realize how many were actually in the audience until
Yeah.
they stood up and just wrapped around the entire gym, and so all the kids having their grandparents and fathers or mothers, whatever, nieces, uncles, all that kind of stuff. That was really cool to see. So, and I think that the kindergartners might have been the highlight of it. It wasn't intended to be what do you call it, like a round where they sing off sync, but somehow they managed to be like a perfect round of 3 by the end of it. It was pretty entertaining for everybody.
Yeah, I went to Hauser's Veterans Day performance, and it was our last one as a family. And my father's a veteran, and he unfortunately couldn't make it this year. But we loved that that ceremony, and the choir and the orchestra and the wind ensemble performed, and it was a very moving and on time. Man, it was you guys were on the schedule, and you guys were on it. It was like very impressive. I don't know how Hauser staff managed that feat, but it was fantastic. I also attended the wind ensemble concert that was the week prior, which was also just amazing to hear how much better they get from 5th grade to
When they have it every day
the
at 6.
symphonic and the wind ensemble were just fantastic. So hats off to them.
All right. A lot of great board member comments tonight. Okay, next on the agenda are committee reports. First is the Personnel Committee.
Nothing new from the last one. We're looking at dates to meet for follow-up, same topics before, and actually I think I owe some dates on that myself of when I'm actually available, so this was a good reminder for me.
All right. Next then is the Finance Committee.
I had a brief phone conversation with Mr. Fitton last week. Nothing that new. There's some maybe some minor adjustments in the levy, and we have a motion tonight about the transfer funds from the operations maintenance to capital projects. But I think that if I recall, that's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next then is Education.
Yeah, we had our annual student achievement report from Ms. Angela Dolzel, and it was very extensive, and so it was really great to see our schools still performing very well. We, of course, have areas that we're going to be focused on, math instruction and vertical alignment, and kind of the same path we've been taking though for a few years, so we're hoping it's going to be successful, and continued supports for teachers that really can work across their grade level as well between buildings. So it's some focus, and we'll be talking about more topics for the future. So if you guys have topics that you would like discussed, please reach out.
All right. Thanks, Sherry. Next then is Facilities.
We will be meeting tomorrow morning, and we will be discussing an update of the progress of the plans, which includes the final construction documents, a review of the final of financial projections, and just a general update on current status of where the projects are on our timeline.
Bright and early tomorrow morning.
All right. Next then is Policy.
Yeah, I'm going to save it for a little bit later.
I was just going to say, don't get any time.
Yeah, you're on the stopwatch for that.
A lot of policies.
A lot of policy. All right, that closes committee reports. Next up then is Old Business. First item under Old Business is the approval of the Memorandum of Understanding for DLA Architects for playground work. Is there a motion to approve the MOU for DLA Architects for playground work?
So moved.
Second.
All right, is there discussion?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments to make about this, the playgrounds at Blythe and Ames. So one general comment is it's a very important part of our, these outdoor spaces are a very important part of our master facility plan. You know, outdoor learning, play space, and all the rest. So shouldn't be sort of an afterthought. It should be very important. And I think it is important to both the board and the community and the schools. In that context, I think some board members were not here when this board hired DLA. But I remember very distinctly that when we did hire them, someone, I don't remember who, asked the president of the firm, Carrie Matlock, about playgrounds and whether they design playgrounds. And at that point, she said, that's really not our focus. We can do that, but we generally work with a partner on that, and it's not sort of our main focus. And so in that context, I think I think it'd be a better a route to actually talk to companies that do focus on playgrounds and find out what their philosophy is for building playgrounds, what their experience is. For example, in the case of DLA, their partner, I don't even know who the partner is. I don't know what their philosophy is. I don't know what their approach is. I don't know what they've done. The one example that we saw, I think, was in the last meeting. We saw a presentation by the architect of a playground in Itasca that they're working on. I did not find that terribly inspiring myself. And so I do think that for a variety of reasons, even though it's very late in the day, and we probably should have been doing this 6 months ago, that it would be preferable to talk to more firms and firms that specialize in playgrounds and get some more ideas and find out, who can do what for us. So that's just my my view on this matter.
Can I just add something? Because the playground process has been very cumbersome. So we need a planning partner who can help us with site dimensions, with water retention, understanding kind of the unique issues. Particularly, we know that at Hollywood, just even the land ownership or land lease, et cetera, has been a particular challenge. So I had looked at playground cooperatives, I had looked at architectural firms, I had looked at the landscape architecture firm that's doing the Central Hauser project, and it really was my recommendation that we work with DLA because they understand the intricacies of our site. What I understand in terms of the process is we work with the playground committee, we work with DLA, and then we go out to bid and we ask playground specialty companies to come forward and bid on our actual project. But what I know is that we don't have a project that the playground specialty companies can bid on until we have defined our site, have understood sort of the specifications, right? The scope and specifications of a project. So we're not asking DLA to decide how many slides or how many swings or that kind of thing. We're really asking DLA to help us determine our site and then help us pull together people for focus groups, et cetera, to gain that community input about what this community wants for playgrounds. So again, I just feel like because it was very confusing to me in the beginning too, is how do you sort of take that first really big step around that scope and specifications of the project to begin with, particularly when we're not rebuilding playgrounds, we are creating a new site at Ames, and we are potentially creating a different site, maybe the same site, yet to be determined, at Hollywood. So there's a sort of a complex set of pieces to the process there. So for that reason, I think our architectural partner is a good partner in this particular process.
Is this firm that DLA partners with, do you know who that is exactly?
So we will go out to bid. DLA will help us set the scope and specifications, our site design essentially. And then once, with input from the community, we have a plan, then we put it out to bid. Because we know it's more than a $25,000 project, we're subject to competitive bidding here. So that's where when companies that, and I know there are a lot of playground development companies out there, but then they come forward and bid on our actual project. They become the implementers.
When you say bid, are you talking about like bidding on? They're gonna do the design. They're gonna design the playgrounds. Or we're asking for bids for design work, or bids for here is the design and you bid on it. Which
the design yet to be defined, and perhaps what I know is we will ask children, we will ask parents, we'll ask community members, our leadership team, our teachers, to give us input, and they may say, we really want slides, we really want climbing materials, we really want swings, or we don't want swings, we want it to be turf, or we want it to be wood chips. So our own committee, our own community with input, focus groups, et cetera, will give us those ideas. And then when we say, so we're looking at these site specifications, mostly determined by dimension and the type of play that we want to do. Then other companies come forward and say, we would build you that playground. Here's our bid to build out that playground.
But just to be clear, when we go out to bid for like an addition at Ames, the addition at Ames, when the bidding process occurs, we are giving the construction firms essentially the blueprints and saying, this is exactly what we want to build. What is your price to build it, right? And they're all going to come back with a different, with their price for that particular construction project. Are you saying that for the playground, it's going to be the same in the sense that we're going to say, here's what we want to build, what is your price to build it? Or are you saying, we don't really know what we want to build, you are going to come in and design it for
No, you have
us?
to give them enough specifications so that the bids can be competitive, right? So that everyone knows they're doing a climbing structure, but do we need to say the climbing structure will be right here?
Mm-hmm.
I honestly don't know the answer to that very specific question.
Okay, the way I'm interpreting this is that the DLA is going to be laying it out, and then we're going to say, well, we want swings, we want slides, we want like climbing structure. We don't know necessarily how many swings we want, how many slides we want. We'd go out and bid for that to go out to a playground company and say, okay, this is what we're conceptually we want. Now design that out for us and on this plot of land.
So each company could come back with their own design, essentially.
I think they could say, I think you'd be happier to have your climbing structure over here because there's a shady area. Again, I don't know for sure. We haven't done that part of the process yet. So typically, in many school situations, and I think this was kind of the case back with Hollywood back in 2015, 2016, is that you knew where you were wanting to build it, right? You were wanting to redo equipment on a certain piece of land. Now we're saying, there's all new site at Ames, right? And we're talking about soft surface, hard surface. Is it all play? Is some of it going to be left as just
Right,
sort of
and that's-
natural space?
Exactly, and that's the
right.
reason why I would like to get more ideas, design from companies that specialize in this. And maybe DLA, maybe I hope if they end up doing it, they're going to do a great job. Maybe I hope. But I think it would be ideally better to say, okay, here are these other three firms that do to specialize in thinking about design playgrounds, where stuff goes, what kind of stuff, how it's laid out, all of those questions, and say, here are our ideas. Of course, we're going to work with the community, but we're going to bring, and then we could sort of select between those firms. So that's kind of, and then obviously we go out to bid for whoever we're going to build it. I think at the end of the day, I think obviously we need to do that. But I just think we would be better off getting more ideas, maybe more competition, and
So are you suggesting having somebody come in and say, here's three options, pick one? Because what I'm hearing Martha say
what I would say is having three firms, select three firms that design playgrounds.
right,
Come in and say, hey, here's our
without our input, just here's what you should do.
well,
based on the
here's
space.
our philosophy of playgrounds. Here's what we sort of think is important for kids. Here's some of the stuff we built here recently in your area. And we could then say, oh yeah, this looks really like in line, just like we did when we hired an architectural firm. We had three firms come in, they showed us their stuff, they talked about their design philosophy, and we selected one. So it would be that sort of idea.
I mean, I guess I'm understanding that's what we would go through, but DLA first has to say, here's your plot of land, here's the drainage that's required, and then let's bid on what we philosophically want. So I think that's I'm understanding this to be that process. Like, it's not just going to be DLA
I feel like
says,
there's a
"Here's our
misunderstanding
partner."
about the process.
When you say bid, do you mean just the people that are going to build that we choose equipment? Is that what you mean by bids? Because there
So
are
you have to
companies
have
that you can buy from a catalog, or there's some that will actually design intentionally with what's happening cognitively, and they'll bring in different materials. And so I'm confused too, whether you mean design or the actual structures.
Both. Because the architecture firm, a design firm, landscape architects, or a playground cooperative, right? And I had heard you often don't get favorable pricing from playground cooperatives. So in terms of the research and analysis that I did, you're talking about site specifications. So that might be, we want, again, the amount of land, the dimensions, what's required in terms of managing water, and then with this input from the community that we don't have yet, right, who will say, we want outdoor reading, we want play, and we want something else. It doesn't mean that we're not going out to bid on playground equipment.
I understand.
That will be one part of
I
it.
understand that. I understand
Okay.
talking about
Okay.
design at this point, what goes where, and what the drainage is, but I guess I'm making the assumption that any competent playground firm that focuses on design will understand all of those elements, and they would help us with that.
Yeah, I
Hopefully
guess.
they would bid on it too.
Well, I know, because the MOU talks about creation of conceptual options, which to me means designing the playground. So how can we have two people doing the same thing?
What, I think, this is where I'm confused. If we don't tell them what we want, I mean, it's like, we hired DLA, you tell us what building we should build. We told them we want a multi-purpose room, we want it to be 2 stories, we want it on the back, we want it in this space,
Right.
whatever. And then they said, okay, here's 3 options. So now we're gonna say, here's the land that we have for a playground, we want hard surface, soft surface, structures, whatever. Hopefully people will come in and say, here's our 3 options, they cost this. Here's our 3 options, they cost this. Here's 3 options, they cost
But
this.
would
And then
DLA be presenting those 3 options?
I mean, no.
No,
'cause they-
playground, companies that specialize in playground equipment, outdoor play, outdoor learning. So what I also know about these companies is that they usually are not just about swings and slides and climbing structures anymore, right? It is about outdoor learning, it is about exploration, it is about cognitive and social development. So that's what people who specialize in the outdoor play and outdoor learning, who sell the equipment, right? They do sell the stuff, right? Whether it's outdoor learning tables and chairs, as well as play equipment, et cetera. They will come forward in a competitive bidding situation. But to do a competitive bid fairly and appropriately as a public school entity, we have to give them some basic plan so that there's some comparison. You know, that we can't say, new toys, come on in and tell us how you would build a playground. Game time, come in and tell us how you would build a playground. We have to give them enough specification to make them comparable.
Well, in that process, though, wouldn't it basically come down to the lowest cost, the lowest price?
Lowest responsible, but once this, but we're talking about first is site and design. And that's where, again, it's been my recommendation that we work with our architecture firm, because we're talking about brand-new sites at Ames, brand-new site dimensions and area. And at Hollywood, we've been talking about it being confusing where it goes. And so understanding, are we doing the addition, are we not doing the addition, where would the playground go, where would the parking lot go? Again, to work with the firm that has been sort of understanding that with us every step of the way seems meaningful. But again, it is up to the board to decide that. And so we have this MOU that there's a proposal whether or not to vote yes or to vote no on it.
I mean, I just don't see how without a plot blueprint, we ask anybody to bid on anything.
Well, I totally agree.
Yeah.
But that's all DLA is doing with this MOU.
Well, not exactly. It does give them creation, conceptual control. In a lot of these, they will meet with the committees, but I
Right, which the committees are us and the teachers and the students and the community members. And
Yes, but would the other companies get a chance to hear that
Right.
information, you know?
I mean, I look at it as very similar to what the addition at Ames is. I mean, there's a lot of input from the community, from the facilities advisory committee, from the board about kind of what we wanted. But at the end of the day, they came up with a set of possible designs, right? It was up to their creativity to do that, to come up with some possible things that we're hopefully going to settle on very shortly. And I guess I'm thinking the same process here, but applied to the outdoor, which is to say, yes, there'll be input from us, there'll be input from the community, but let's see examples of what you've done. You show us, like this, DLA showed us last meeting. They showed us an example of something they're working on in Itasca right now. That's an example. I assume they think it's a good one because they showed it to us. Let's see some other possible designs that people have done. Because there has to be a very large number of ways you could lay things out.
Right.
Maybe some groups are better at it than others.
And I guess that my thought is we are so far down this process, we need to move forward with this. Otherwise, I think we're putting the playground in jeopardy of the schools not to be aligned with the construction. And so, while Jeff, I understand where you're coming from, and I see that we should have probably gone out and possibly looked at playground specific companies that specifically do playgrounds for this. I think we're too far down the road right now to pull this out. I think we just need to move forward. I don't think they're going to do a bad job. Would there be a company that might do a better job? Probably, but I think we need to move forward with what we've got right now.
I think it would be something that I personally think would be valuable would be for a commitment from the board and the superintendent to whoever we hire and to the committees that we will promote materials that don't disrupt hormonal development, that are non-toxic as much as possible. I think that would be a neat statement for us as a community to kind of give direction to the hiring firms and to the committees to say we support natural, as much as we can, natural materials. It doesn't have to be every single piece, but as much as we can, things that do not, you know, leave toxic residue on the children when they're playing. And I think that's an easy thing that we could do, having heard about the materials last time. So I think that would be a neat direction.
I'd want to hear from the community first.
Right.
I mean, I can tell you my personal opinion, but that's not my spot on in this position. It's to hear what the community wants. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I think we've all talked about, you know, we all agree that health and safety is important, and we talk about, you know, the design of our furniture for the children and what's good for them, and I don't think it's a bad conversation to have, talking about materials that's,
no, it's definitely
might
a
be
great
dangerous,
conversation to
so,
have.
yeah.
You know.
I
in
think
the
that should
committee.
happen in the future, that we could have a discussion about material safety.
I mean, I think that would be part of this conversation.
Right.
Well, I haven't heard it yet. I'm just saying
Right.
that's my
Yeah,
preference, and I
exactly.
hope it becomes part of the agenda and the direction for what happens.
So at this point, can we possibly, I mean, I think we've, you know, unless there's more discussion to be had, but
Well, one thing I would like answered, I think, you know, Dave mentioned it, I'm not sure if it's true or not, though, but if we do not approve this agenda, this MOU tonight, are we putting the timeline at risk? Are we not going to make, particularly with Ames, are we going to have the construction projects out of alignment, and is this going to potentially increase our costs?
I would think, yes, we're putting that out of alignment. So the process would be that you would go out for a request for proposals from design firms, and that could be people that would choose to come forward, could be architecture firms, could be landscape architecture firms, could be playground providers. So request for proposal is sort of like Jeff, to your point, that's how we found an architect, right? It's how you find attorneys. And so there's a professional services opportunity that school boards can engage in. So that would be putting that proposal out. It would be boards considering the proposal at one meeting, then approving it at a next. So I think you're talking into, I honestly don't even know, because I'd have to go back and research the timelines required for an RFP again, but I think you're talking to December, January, February, just to choose the design firm, right? And so the design firm then would start the process similar to what DLA has proposed, is that they would start working with the playground committee, who would then give input to the kinds of things that we want playgrounds or outdoor learning spaces to be about. So I think, and again, I don't know how quickly then these things can get built, but I think you're significantly adjusting the timeline. Whether or not that becomes something then that couldn't be done summer of 2020, I'm hesitant to say without more research.
Can you explain why in the architect's compensation, the Hollywood is slightly more than the Ames? What was the thinking about that? Was it a time requirement, or where did that, can you remind me why that's the case?
No, I'm sorry to say I don't exactly have an answer for that one. so.
Because it's a smaller site, but it maybe it has to do with time anticipated for
Well, I
meetings?
think
don't
it's
know.
actually a site that they have even less knowledge
That's what I
of.
was
So
about to
is it
say.
just, that's what I'm saying, is it just a time issue for meetings, or, you know,
No, I think it's more so
anticipated-
like studies that would have to be done on the
Well, that's
site.
what I'm saying, you know, anticipated visits and,
Yeah, because they've,
because it's, you know, it's several thousand, so I was wondering.
I think with regards to Ames, they pretty much already have an idea of where things can go. I mean,
Right.
they've got full control of those site plans. So, honestly.
Part of that increase of wanting to split these rather than having combined committees,
Right,
which
yeah.
he said is going to cost more because it's going to be more time. So I think this revision is the estimate of that more
Yeah,
time.
yeah, I was just curious if they gave an
We're
explanation about it, other than, yeah, it's more time for investigation.
And again, if the board wants to move in that direction in terms of a request for proposal and looking at different firms, that's certainly something that the board gets to decide, and I'm open to that. And again, my desire in working with DLA was around efficiency and a deep understanding of our sites.
Yeah,
And because of the complexities of our sites right now, particularly, I guess, Hollywood with the land allocation being up in the air so long, and we are at the moment of deciding whether or not we're going to build an addition at Hollywood or not. building an addition, separating play and parking, improving a playground. Those are all part of our goals. And it has, as this board knows and as the community knows, that has been cumbersome and complicated. So having that understanding, I think, does enhance and does improve some efficiency around our planning and design options.
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Miller in some respects. I'm somewhat disappointed, having been on the prior board, that I had always had the understanding that we would actually investigate playground firms, because we talked about it years prior. So it's a disappointment, but I do understand the time frame, but it's unfortunate.
I don't know, maybe I'm misunderstanding this, but I feel like we can still do that, working through DLA.
I believe we're still going to be working with playground firms. Yeah. And that,
I don't
what
think
what
these are
I understood,
mutually
and I did
exclusive options.
extensive research and analysis on how to get started, right? And I contacted our attorney and I said, how do I even start working with these playground firms? He said, Martha, you have to have a design proposal first. You have to have someone design your site so that you can have comparable and competitive bids, because you're spending over $25,000. So that's where then we got, anyway. I've
Yeah,
said
I mean, I
enough.
agree
I've said
with that.
enough.
Just to
Sorry.
be clear, I totally
Yeah.
agree with that point.
Yeah.
But the question is, who's doing the design? That's the question. Yeah,
Right,
whether-
right.
And I guess I see it as site design and dimensions and water retention and not
Right.
how
I think
many
that's
swings and
playground.
slides.
Right, but I
Because the
think
people I
that's-
see
that's-
deciding
I think
that
that's-
are children.
I
and our
think I know
staff
why
and our
some of us are
community.
confused. I think some of us are confused because we did see the presentation of their actual design and why they chose blue for the pretend
That was-
water. I think that's what's.
But that was facilitated by Itasca and Itasca's community.
That's what I
Absolutely,
tasked.
absolutely. I think that's what is kind of hard for some of us, at least for me, is not being able to see a couple more options than just that. So,
But that's going to come from community input. I guess it's been one of those where it's,
But I'd like to know
Yeah.
that there are some other options. So that's.
there are many options. There are many options that have not been discussed because we haven't invited the community in for the conversation yet. So.
All right. Yeah, is there any further discussion? Okay, Margie, can you call the roll?
Mr. Marhol?
Abstain.
Ms. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
No?
Mr. Barsadi?
Aye.
Mr. Muirhead?
Aye.
Ms. Kleiber?
No.
Mr. Hunt?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay, next on the agenda is the approval of the MOU with Riverside Education Council regarding insurance deductibles. Is there a motion to approve the MOU with the Riverside Education Council for insurance deductibles?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion?
Maybe Dan or Martha might be good, just for the public who's maybe not familiar with the exact, I know we talked about it last time, but just to remind people what this is.
Actually, Jim, do you want to give an explanation?
The deductibles that we negotiated in the last agreement with the REC doesn't work with our current manager of our deductibles, Blue Cross Blue Shield. So we could find someone to customize deductibles, which would cost more to switch to a different company and create a lot more work for employees to file for deductibles, because our medical's with Blue Cross Blue Shield and then they share the information. Or we could, it would cost less to adjust these so that our deductibles are multiples by the number of people that are covered. So single, and then for single plus one, it's double that. And for family, it's triple the single. So this gets everything in alignment. With the REC, went right along with it, and we basically agreed to something that, had we known what the limitations of Blue Cross Blue Shield back when we were negotiating, this is what we would agree to at the time.
And Jim, when you discussed this with REC, they were amenable and understanding of what had happened?
Yes.
The total cost difference was how much roughly? Do you remember?
Over the 2 years, maybe $8,500.
If all deductibles are fulfilled.
If everyone uses their full
Right.
That was the
deductible,
maximum-
right?
maximum.
Yep.
All right. All right, are we ready for a vote? All right, Margie, can you call the roll?
Ms. Kleiber? Mr. Muirhead?
Aye.
Ms. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Marhol?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Barsadi?
Aye.
Mr. Hunt?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay, next item is a resolution to transfer funds from the operating and maintenance fund to the capital projects fund. Is there a motion to transfer funds for the resolution to transfer funds from the operating to the maintenance, operating and maintenance fund to capital? Excuse me.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, Margie, can you call the roll?
Mr. Muirhead?
Aye.
Ms. Kleiber?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Barsadi?
Aye.
Mr. Marhol?
Aye.
Ms. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Hunt?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay, next item is the Riverside IGA security camera relay. Is there a motion to terminate the security camera relay intergovernmental agreement with the Village of Riverside?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, is there discussion?
So this is just an outright termination. And if they want to come back to us, they'd have to re-engage
Yeah.
the entire process.
So legally, it's either it continues on or it gets terminated. So there's not really a way to sort of table it or put it on hold. It's a termination or a continue.
Yeah.
I think this is part of the annual renewal process, is that correct?
So there isn't really an annual review, annual renewal. Right, we had agreed that annually we would look at all of our IGAs. So when we looked at it at the beginning of the school year, there were questions because the security camera relay has not been installed, and it's really just because of where the village has been in terms of their implementation of their overall plan. And I know that gave some board members pause, and I know the initial approval process was also something that gave some board members pause. So that's really what comes up. What we have here is some updated information from the village. It's information that was presented to the village board around their crime prevention follow-up. So again, the request to us, the IGA that we did enter into, was to have this relay device installed on the roof of our middle school.
And I guess my concern was there have a number of concerns, but originally when this was originally proposed, they were talking just putting a camera outside and it was going to be a relay for a local camera close to the school. I wasn't at the board meeting, but I did watch the video and I watched Chief Weisfeld's presentation. It's a part of a much broader initiative in the community. There are multiple cameras being placed throughout the community, and in fact, some apartment buildings have already, actually 2 apartment buildings have given the Riverside Police direct access to their cameras. They don't need to file any requests. They basically can just go right in and take a look at those cameras anytime they want. And so I guess my concern is that, first of all, it's what we originally approved this for. It seems like the scope has changed. It's a much larger scope now. And then also, I guess one thing that sort of caught my attention during the presentation is that there was no talk of any safeguards of how can we assure that this stuff is not going to be abused by those watching it. And that just caused me some concern because, having been in technology, that's the first thing you talk about is like you want to make sure there's safeguards, there's policies and procedures that this is not abused. And there really wasn't. There was never that discussion. The most that we heard about was the videos are kept for 90 days and that the police cannot take their computers outside the cars without, they would lose access to those cameras. There has to be a lot more. It's like, who has access to it? How often, what are their policies for if something happened? So I'm all for terminating this contract just because the scope has changed from what we originally thought.
To be fair, though, I guess what you're talking about, if that's already in operation and we don't have the relay in place, then I'm not sure the scope has changed.
Well, I guess from this,
the scope may have changed on the part of the village side.
But that relay is going to be more than just one camera out here near the school. It's going to be part of a much larger initiative.
That's inclusive of apartment buildings that you mentioned, or are you talking additional cameras?
There's cameras at there's cameras at the train station, there's cameras at various intersections. They're even talking of doing cameras with people's Nest doorbells, trying to hook those up to the police station. So it's a much part of a much broader initiative, and I feel that we were not the information that was provided to us when we approved this, we did not get the full picture of what they were going to use this for. Because I'm sure now, I'm confident now that that relay on the top, that they're going to eventually put on top of Hauser, assuming they get funding and what have you, will be part of this much larger initiative. There will be more than one camera following through that relay.
Okay, but I don't know that we have proof of that. I mean, that's speculation, that's sounding like.
And
Well-
the Ring doorbell thing is a participation thing. It's, if I have a Ring doorbell on me, they don't have access to it. I have to participate in the Ring neighborhood.
I think
Right.
there are questions, though, that the neighbor across the street, though, some of their privacy might be invaded if someone else's doorbell camera was catching them, and do we have permission from those people? And I think there needs to be a broader conversation, I agree with David.
Fully understood, but I think that's a conversation for the village board, not
Absolutely,
us.
that's why I feel that doesn't happen, and I also agree with David, I don't think we should go through with something that's not developed.
I think David is correct that this relay would be the main relay for the entire village, though. I think that is correct.
It talks about the relay being from our site to the police facility, which doesn't then,
Well, the reason they wanted this particular site was because it's the high point in the village, so that all of their relay links could aim there and then be transferred to the police station. So that was the reason for that site. So I think David is correct about that point.
I think it's always been part of the larger plan from what I've been following
Right.
anyway. I mean, it was to connect some of the cameras that they already have. It's
Yes.
more just the signal transfer, not just to connect a single camera.
But I guess none of this has come to pass to date, or at least not.
Yeah, so that was my
Their
ultimate
camera
question, is
plan.
I thought there was something I read maybe a month ago that they were maybe possibly coming to a conclusion with what they actually wanted to do with this, but I don't
There's
know.
actually 3 phases to it. Phase 1 is completed. They're looking at phase 2, which would include this antenna.
Okay.
And I guess my issue is that what we were told when we approved it has changed. Okay, we took them at their word that it was going to be like a camera. It was for essentially one camera here. It's obviously much part of a much larger initiative. I think we needed that we should have had that information that this was part of a larger initiative. That I think because of that, I think that we need to know exactly what they're trying to do, because I don't, sort of going back to what my premise was, I don't think the school, especially a much larger initiative, I don't think the school should be involved in participating in this type of activities. I mean, we're supposed to remain neutral. I mean, this is...
That I think is the key argument, that if you're making that argument, that's the key argument as pertains to our decisions, is that should we be involved in this? And I do agree with you that this relay will be central to their whole network. That is to say, this is not going to be like a spin-off. It's going to, this is it. So if a future board changes their mind, it's going to be not easy for the village to say, you know, we're going to reroute all of our different cameras to some other place. So we're kind of like going to be, if we do this,
we're going to
locked
be
in.
active participants in this initiative.
I guess I don't see nefariousness so much, though, as sloth. I guess there's no one from the village here, and they haven't acted on this yet.
Right, to me, that's the biggest unknown, is there is no direction from them, and I do not want an agreement that has no purpose and no direction and questionable participation on our part. I agree that we should be neutral in those areas, so.
Joel, you haven't said anything on this?
Can we ask for more clarification from the village what their ultimate plan is?
I think we did that.
I mean, I think if you look in this memo, it
I think all
states...
these memos are
All right.
old.
No, this most recent one...
They are very old, yes.
No, this most recent one was what he presented. I mean, yes, it's February.
Right.
But that's the most recent thing they've done.
Right, and that's what he presented, last week at the board meeting. Yeah, it was the 7th.
That is the most recent information
Right.
that's being presented.
So I guess, I don't know, Martha, you spoke with them on this and let them
Yeah.
know that this was in danger of going down?
and what they shared was that there'd been this recent update, and I see that it's from their village board meeting.
Has anybody from the village board reached out to us to provide clarity on what they're trying to do or input on what we're concerned about or anything like that? Or it's just been silence since we approved the agreement?
No, so I reached out to them this fall and said, is there any update? And so that's what was provided to us here, that's,
Just
that
that
the
they
police
presented
chief had just done a
information.
recent update on the sort of overall village crime prevention plan. It does seem that they were slower to get started than they anticipated. I think that was financial, but I'm not sure, I really don't want to speak for the village on this one. It's, you know, they're asking us to put that relay point up on there. I go back to, that was a challenging vote back initially, and then the reason it comes back up is because we had agreed to look at our IGAs annually, which I think is a good practice, to look at our IGAs annually when they, you know, kind of auto renew essentially, or they're continuous, so.
But I guess the last sentence of this memo from, was it Chief Weitzel? Yeah, from the thing says, you know, we have this agreement in place with D96, even though we haven't used it, we're planning to do so in Phase 2, but it's contingent on village board approval for funding. So, I mean, do we know if they're gonna fund that? Like, we're gonna kill this and 2 weeks from now, they're gonna approve funding and
I don't know, I know there was a lot of interest initially on the village's part of putting cameras at the entranceway, various
Yeah.
entranceways to the village. And that, I think, was what the trustees had in mind about what this was all about.
Right.
And then I think, for some reason, that somehow the thing got sidetracked into putting cameras out here on Kimbark, where they have all these accidents where the cars go through the intersection. And then
I'm talking about the traffic cameras.
the actually, it was going to be the security, the relay that they wanted, the initial camera they wanted to use this relay for, which is putting a camera right out here on Kimbark, because there's been like 7 accidents because drunk drivers come through at night, and you know that crazy stoplight there that's sort of halfway in the road.
Right.
It's like every 6 months a car barrels through there and hits the, like, you know, misses the
Hits the
street,
embankment.
and so they wanted to put a camera there, which would be fine, but it's not really, this would not be a crime prevention camera so much as we're gonna, you know, see what happened when the drunk driver comes through, kind of thing. And so I think that my understanding is that when that became more apparent, then that was the village trustee said, you know, that was the initial, that shouldn't be the initial focus. We should go back to the original focus, putting cameras at the entranceways. I think that's, at least that's my understanding, but I could be wrong about that, so that's kind of what
That makes sense with the cameras that they have listed.
yeah.
It's entryways. There's nothing about Kimberly.
All right, is there any further discussion? All right, Margie, can you call the roll?
Mr. Miller?
This is a vote to terminate?
To terminate.
Okay,
Terminate.
Aye.
Mr. Marhol?
Aye.
Mr. Muirhead?
Abstain.
Ms. Kleiber?
Hi.
Ms. Murphy?
No.
Mr. Barsadi?
Aye.
Mr. Hunt?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay. Next is the D96 tax year 2019 levy. Is there a motion to approve the D96 tax?
No, we're not voting
We're
on
not
that.
voting on it,
Just to
sorry.
kind of update, yeah.
Just an update,
We
sorry.
get to do this a couple more times.
Right.
So the total proposed levy hasn't changed since last meeting. And in this update, I was shifting some money, some of the requests from retirement fund and liability, which are overfunded, and put it more into the ed fund. At the bottom of page 2, you can see the adding 1.1 million to education. The total not changing. Currently, we have 300% fund balance in IMRF Social Security and 900% in the tort liability fund. And those are funds that aren't easy to transfer to where we need to use them. But we can start replenishing them at a much slower pace, so the balances get down to where we want them to be. And there's, I would target it still a year's worth, at least get them both to 100%, but we can use that money in education. So just a shift between funds for this request. Any questions? Okay. We'll talk about it again next meeting.
That's what I knew he was going to say.
Okay. Next then is new business.
All right, so those at home, you want to go take a break, 15 minutes, 20 minutes? So,
Any sports scores we need to update?
yeah, exactly. So the IASB came out with their policies, and Dan, you should be very fortunate that you are not doing this anymore. But there are 44?
Well, we have about 40.
40. We have 40 policies, and so what I was going to do is I was going to go through and read these
Each one verbatim.
verbatim. I was going to read each one of these, but what we were going to do is, so we're going to, Martha and I spoke, and we're going to chunk these out so that they're more manageable. We want to, we're going to chunk them out. So as the first set we want to approve will be in December, and Martha's going to come out with a list of which ones are need renewal at the end of the year. So we're going to approve those, and then we're going to chunk them out from there. But just because there are so many, and I don't think we're going to get through. So I can tell you right now, I have not reviewed these. These just recently came, within the last few days. So I have not had a chance to review them. But so that's the approach. However, if we want to discuss them, or if there's anything, if anyone's had a chance to review them, and there's things that you want me to pay attention to, I'll be more than happy to.
So just making sure I'm understanding. So right now, we're actually not going to go through each one of them. What we're going to do is you're going to chunk them out for different meetings.
Right, I'm going to read them off all so that we don't have to go through this exercise again. But then we will chunk them out in approval.
Okay.
And so the first set approved will be the ones that are more time sensitive, that have to be approved by the end of the year, and then go.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're right, it's going to get overwhelming.
But this would be considered the first reading.
This would be considered the first reading for all of them.
Now, there are several of these that have questions to be
Yes, I was
answered. Are we
gonna
going to
ask,
answer those
yeah.
tonight?
Need to study more.
Yeah, I would say we need to study these more, and
Okay.
The ones with questions, are those the ones proposed by the council from the IASB, or those things that you and Martha have suggested, or these?
Oh, those
from
are IASB.
Yeah.
Those are IASB.
I was just thinking there's more than
options.
usual.
There's more policies.
Do I
Well,
need to
I
read the
know, but
questions?
it was a.
I would highly recommend these first few pages in the Press Plus manual.
Yeah.
That just are basically going over all the different legislation. It's so helpful to get a real good look at that and then look at them, because you can tell all of a sudden then like, oh, 7 policies are all because of we
Because of
need to
that,
expand
yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Well, and Linda's absolutely right. There's a lot relating to cannabis and the fact
Yes.
that you can't call cannabis a drug anymore.
Right.
There's a number on sexual abuse. There's a number
harassment,
on
The change in this,
harassment.
and asking
Yes.
for salary history, you know, it's all
Salary,
just-
that's
A
privacy,
lot of them
yeah.
are things that have gone through, have become public knowledge in terms
Right.
of just overall affecting the public, and then there are a number that are very school-specific, including the change to, back to a 5-hour
Yes,
school day minimum.
right.
It runs the gamut.
I know,
There's a
I was
lot.
trying
And
to
I
figure out,
appreciate
I like that you're
David's
splitting them up, because I was trying to
efforts.
figure out how we would navigate that.
Right. Yeah.
So thank you.
But I would also say if there's any that have already caught sort of board members'
Exactly,
questions or concerns, that we would want to do some more thorough
Right. Right.
conversations with our own
Right, I
attorney.
mean,
If
yeah, I
you
had some
let us
questions
know.
like, does this relate to our district, or is this more of a, you know,
There was
higher
one that I
education
had a
issue?
question
Yeah.
about.
Hunting
Was the-
safety?
About the administering of glucagon.
Glucagon,
Yeah, because
yeah.
I was like, is that something we do?
Diabetes.
You know, that was the,
Right.
personally, after reading through all the legislation,
that?
all the policy changes make sense. That one, I just was like, I have no idea about that. I'm assuming
So-
Ms. Shaw would know more, and not that we have to ask now, but I'm just saying, that's one that I would want some background on.
Well, how does
All the vaping issues too, I know we have junior hires, so it's of course relevant that we talk about those, but there are a
how
lot
does
of
this-
specifics we can think about, what we want to talk, how we want to phrase it, I guess.
So how does this sound? How about I go through, I'll read them all off,
Yep, we'll
Okay.
just let you talk. We'll let you read.
Take a breath.
and then ones that you have specific ones on, if you can just reference the policies
Okay.
and what you want us to follow up on, we can go from there. All right? Okay. All right, so is IASB Press Policy 102 update. This is going to be the first reading. So policy 2:20, powers and duties of the Board of Education, indemnification. Policy 2:70, vacancies on the Board of Education, filling vacancies. Policy 2:270, E-exhibit, checklist for filling board vacancy by appointments. Policy 2:100, board member conflict of interest. Policy 2:105, ethics and gift ban. Now, I do have a question. Do I need to read the question, or?
No, I think you don't.
Okay.
We can talk about that next.
Unless the board members would want the question read out loud.
No.
What was the question, David?
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He's saying, should he read
Should
all
we read the
that?
question?
Oh, no, please don't.
Okay. Thank you, Joel.
Should I read the question? Well, what was the question?
Sorry, now I apologize for not quite being on target.
I'm sorry, before we move on though, for this one and the next policy, I think that's something that Martha, you and I would definitely need to discuss that.
Yes, I was going to ask that too, because it's very specific with regards to what's best practice
yeah.
for our superintendents
Yeah.
in the near areas, and if that even exists around here, and who uses them and provides them. So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Policy 2:110, qualification terms and duties of board officers. Policy 2:200, type of board education meetings. Policy 2:220, Board of Education meeting procedures. Policy 2:220, E2 exhibit, motion to adjourn to closed meeting. Policy 2:220, E exhibit, log off closed session minutes. Policy 2:260, uniform grievance procedures. Policy 3:40, exhibit, checklist for the superintendent contract negotiation process. Policy 4:15, identity protection. Policy 4:30, revenue and investments. Policy 4:60, purchase and contracts. Policy Policy 5:120, employee ethics, conduct, and conflict of interest. Policy 5:200, terms and conditions of employment and dismissal. Policy 5:220, substitute teachers. Policy 5:250, leaves of absence. Policy 5:290, employment, termination, and suspensions. Policy 5:330, sick days, vacation, holidays, and leaves. Policy 6:20, school year calendar and day. Policy 6:60, curriculum content. Policy 6:150, home and hospital instruction. Policy 7:20, harassment of students prohibited. Policy 4:80, accounting and audits. Policy 4:150, facility management and building programs. Policy 5:10, equal employment opportunity and minority recruitment. Policy 5:20, workplace harassment prohibited. Policy 5:20, E-resolution to prohibit sexual harassment. Policy 5:30, hiring process and criteria. Policy 5:90, abused and neglected child reporting. Policy 5:100, staff development program. Policy 7:150, agency and police interviews. Policy 7:270, administering medicines to students. Policy 5:50, drug and alcohol-free workplace, e-cigarette, tobacco, and cannabis prohibition. Policy 8:30, visitors to and conduct on school property. And a new policy, 4:190, targeted school violence prevention program. So those are all the policies. So if there's I guess I would just like to know if anyone's had a chance to look at any of them and have any questions. If you can just let me know the policy, what your questions are, and I can get more information on that.
Well, I guess I'm wondering, I'm wondering procedurally for the policies that have questions to answer. So are we going to answer those as we're approving them?
Yeah, we'll get some additional legal input on the questions in
Okay.
particular, so we would bring that forward along with the second
Right.
reading.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, and then again, as I mentioned, I think, Martha, you and I should have a discussion about the, which ones was it, 505 and 510?
Yeah, and
Let me go back here.
Where are those?
Was it 2:105 and 2:110?
I believe so, yes.
Right.
the new
Yes, that was the one.
policy.
Yeah. The violence prevention.
Yeah, David, I would like to, I guess, as it's a new policy and it's due to, you know, some requirements passed in the General Assembly, like, I guess I would like to hear more about that one.
Okay.
And this is actually one, Pam Shaw's already been to workshops on this one, so Pam has done a lot to make sure she's well-informed as our key administrator in setting this
Yeah.
up, threat
Okay.
assessment teams, et cetera, so.
And in that one, there's a lot of discussion about changes to district and basically liability.
Yes.
And there seems to be a lot of undefinedness about how we are protected when we implement the policy. So I think that would be changes to our liability. Anytime that happens, should be, we should have additional discussion about there, or perhaps additional understanding.
Well, because they're talking about a school-wide, multi-school prevention program, which is not a small undertaking. And there are probably a dozen different factors that come into that, so we need to hear from all the different parties, whether it be social workers or the principals, and that's not a small topic. I just had a question whether the hunting one was relevant, where we needed to engage that one, or if we.
The hunting one?
A hunting course in our curriculum,
Yeah.
right after civics.
Yeah.
Whether, how many districts there, is it
I know.
downstate or is
I
it?
know. I saw that and I thought I was misreading, and then
No. Yeah. Do we have requests for that?
Is there any other policies? Yeah.
I think there was some questions earlier about the 7270, the administering medicines.
Okay.
Sounds like there would need to be some clarification on the
Yeah.
benefits and if that's something that we would want to do or not.
Right.
And I know there was a policy like 2 years ago where the same thing came up, and I know Pam was very
Yes.
helpful in that.
Yeah.
So undesignated EpiPens
Yeah.
for children with allergies, this now goes into children with diabetes, right? So, and sometimes even getting a prescription for the undesignated. So what is sometimes conceptually very interesting in implementation can become problematic.
Yeah.
So we'll do some additional research on that one, certainly.
Thank you.
I think, Martha, there's one policy about curriculum content, and the question is how do we go about addressing the newly required curriculum items in our current curriculum? And perhaps we already have some
Right,
of those
right.
elements.
Right.
And I'm not saying it should be necessarily answered right now, but when we come to the point of approving it, then that would be a time to identify how we've complied. There's also something about a school report card requirement that's in a current law.
What policy is that?
6:15, school accountability. The policy doesn't change, but the footnote does. And there's a new law, 101-68, effective 1/1/20, regarding school report card requirements. And Angela might be.
Is that one on our list?
It's not on the list, and that's why,
It's because it's just an update,
but it's an update to a policy.
it's an update to a
To a
footnote.
footnote.
It's an
We
update
don't-
to a
you don't have
footnote,
to-
but
this
it
list
is, but
always
it
includes-
has it says school report card requirements. So my assumption is that because Illinois code has changed, then we still need to,
We
obviously
actually
comply
don't
with
need
code.
to, right. So you're saying just look into it, but that's not one we actually need to.
No.
it's not one that we need to necessarily approve as a policy, but it does affect how we operate. And that's why it's kind of interesting. There are
Not necessarily, because the policy is unchanged. It's just that the footnotes.
But the law changed.
Right, and that's what happens in
Well,
all
that
of these.
there might be
The law
future
changes,
policies
which might just be the
that
name
have
of the law,
implications
the
of that.
number of the
Well,
law.
or-
So that's a lot of the times, it's just that the actual name and number of the law is changed. so they
Sometimes
update
it does.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just,
the
it says
majority of
that
it.
it's effective a certain date, which usually
Must have been
means that
policy
there's
chair at one
something
point.
new.
I was policy chair at one point.
And I would think if it was something more than just a footnote change, that it would be flagged for us.
Well
if it
versed.
required a
Right, I mean-
change in a
Well,
way to
I
use
think
the
Joel is
report card.
correct. What-
Dave's
The
doing a
point that
great
he's
job on it.
referencing
It is.
very well may have different changes coming down the road in the future.
It may, but not currently
Right.
Not
anything for us
currently,
to do.
correct.
Yeah, and then there is a list in this press packet of things that are in the pipeline to know
Yeah.
about coming up the next time that they're talking about, so.
Seems like they're constantly
Let's just focus
busy.
on this, though.
There's enough here, I think. So in terms of policy 550, I'm wondering, do we have any on-call employees? Is this applicable to us?
Other than substitute.
So, I think in the footnotes, as I was just skimming through this, they refer to custodians, superintendents, building administrators. So even though we're not sort of officially on call, there are employees that get called in the case of an emergency beyond what might be typical hours.
Right, like a pipe burst, and I've seen that where they come in over the weekend.
For sure,
when they had
custodians,
that.
buildings and grounds,
Right.
yeah. But I think I just in looking at it again, there's also something about administrators.
Well, we look forward to seeing
All
the
right.
first batch.
Yes, any other flags, any other policy
it's
questions?
I think we can do that when we come up with them
Yeah.
individually.
I guess, but as you look through it, if you see anything, that you have questions, please let
Okay.
me know. All right.
All right, thank you, David. All right, next up is public comment. Is there any additional public comment? Okay, if not, future meeting dates are December 2nd, 2019 is a special meeting in the Hauser Learning Resource Center at from 6 to 9 p.m. December 4th is a committee of the whole at 7 p.m. at Ames Elementary School. December 18th, a regular business meeting at 7 p.m. in the Hauser Learning Resource Center. Board will enter closed session at 6:30 p.m. if necessary, and return to open session at 7. And I believe we were discussing going back into closed session without action to follow afterwards. So is there a motion to go back into closed session for the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the district, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Margie, can you call the roll?
Ms. Murphy?
Aye.
Ms. Kleiber?
Aye.
Mr. Muirhead? Mr. Barsadi?
Aye.
Mr. Marhold?
Aye.
Mr. Miller? Mr. Hunt?
Aye.
Motion carried.
We'll see.